Hello, Hawks. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to do some basic drawing, setup, and modeling in Autodesk Inventor. Um, if you are at school, you should have somewhere on your desktop a shortcut for Inventor Professional. Currently, this is the year 2021. We are using the 2022 version of the software. If you do not see a desktop icon, you'll probably be able to go down to the Start menu in the bottom left-hand corner and scroll through the list of programs till you find Autodesk Inventor, and there you should be opening up the software. Now, you can see we're getting a load screen here. I already have a copy of this software open, but I wanted to show you what the opening screen will look like. So it may take a little while to load, and when it is done doing so, you should see a screen that is slowly populating, and it's going to look something like this. You may not see these same files down here at the bottom, but you should see something like this. Now, since I have two copies of the software open, I'm going to close one down and open up my first one. So in order to get started, there are a couple different ways that we can do things. If you're interested in it, I generally like to go up to File, New, and by doing so, we get this pop-up window. And in this window, we have some templates. For a good beginning starting point, we are probably going to be working in an inch type of measurement. There is metric, there is mold design, and then we are seeing in the middle of the column, there are a number of different types of files. So a standard part file, a .ipt file, is where we are going to model our parts in Inventor. Okay, so we will model them in 3D, and then either we can have a number of different parts that we want to bring together into an assembly. Okay, an assembly is where we bring together different parts and we make one big part, or we might be interested in making a file for printing or sending out as a PDF, and we'll do that in an IDW, as you see here. And if you ever get far enough, if you make an assembly with multiple parts, you do have the option to actually make a video assembly file where the parts can move and explode from one another and come back together. But today we'll be focusing on starting a part. Now, one of the things that you might be interested in doing is using the projects button down here. Just to show you that very quickly, you'll see that it is going to default or going to be set to default, where everything you save will be in this default folder. Think of it as a folder in your Google Drive or on a computer where everything's going to kind of be saved. Okay, and we know what's active by this check mark. I'm not going to talk about projects on this video, setting them up, but we'll leave things in default for now. So we're going to start with a standard IPT, and let's open that file or start that file. And now we're looking at the interface in Inventor. So up across the top, we have some common toolbars. You'll see those in a lot of Autodesk products. We then have some different menus across the top. Again, we're currently in the 3D modeling menu. We have our drawing area in the middle here. We have our view cube in the top right with a home function, and we have a cube that we can rotate around so we can look at things in 3 dimensions or from different viewpoints. Over in our model tab over here, by the way, under view, we have the user interface. There are a number of different things here we can turn on and off, and the item that we're looking at in the left-hand corner of the screen is the model browser. So if that was unchecked, we would not see that pop-up window. So if you ever see that missing, you probably want to have make sure that you go to View menu, User interface, and then Model browser. One thing that I like to do when I start, it helps me visually kind of know where we are in three-dimensional space in this drawing area, is to go over here in that model bar, and there's this origin folder. And I like to expand that origin folder, and you'll see as I kind of hover over these different planes, we have an XZ, or sorry, a YZ, an XZ, and an XY. I personally like to see a plane sometimes, so I might turn these on or off their visibility. And you can do that by right-clicking on them and going down here to visibility. You see now we have a gray surface, which is our XY plane. If you don't like that on, you can right-click on it and turn it off. What I usually do is I like to go down to this center point. You'll see now we have this yellow dot. This is the 0x, 0y, and 0z point in our modeling space. And I always like to turn that visibility on, because that's going to kind of determine where I start drawing 99% of the time. I'm also, because I kind of like it, I'm going to turn on the XY plane again. Again, it kind of helps me think of it like a piece of graph paper. X is going to be our horizontal. So if this is 0x, to the right it's going to be positive x, to the left it's going to be negative x. Y is going to be vertical, positive y, negative y. Now Z is tricky. Z is going to come right out at the screen at you. But if we want to kind of highlight that, we have our view cube up in the top right, and if I left click and hold, you can see I can kind of move that plane around in three-dimensional space. Okay, if I ever get all twisted, all I have to do is go, hey, maybe that front view, that's typically a primary view, front view. I can left click on that, and it will kind of recenter the view area for you, or the modeling area for you. Another trick, and if you don't have the time, let's say, to use the view cube, I personally like to press and hold the shift button on my keyboard, and then hope you have a mouse with a scroll button. You press and hold the scroll button, you'll see that my cursor changes from an arrow to an orbit option, and that allows me to do roughly the same thing as that view cube. Okay? We also have these arrows, which will allow us to rotate the view if it gets kind of out of whack for you. So now that we have a center point, we have to figure out what file we are going to be using for our demonstration today. I am going to go out to our shared drive. Okay, so we are at the network in school, and I went down to the Windows button and up to Documents, and that will open up this browser window. When you open it up, you probably will not have this PC expanded. If you expand this PC, you should hopefully see the shared S drive, and that will be a local location in the school only. You cannot see this outside of the building. That's where I have a lot of files located for you. Pay attention in class for what files we might be using and their specific location. I also see my U drive. All of you will have your own U drive. And this is where you need to save things. So if you go to another computer in the building and want to get access to these things, this is the only location. Your U drive is the only location you can save to and access on another computer. Okay, you do not have rights to save to an S drive. You may or may not have a link to your Google Drive, and I don't know how these files, I have not tried it, how these files work by saving up to your Google Drive. That may be a viable option. If you feel like trying that, I'd love to hear if that works. I know you can save things there, but I don't know if you can save and work on files at the same time there. And then you probably do not have rights in the building to save to the local hard drive on your computer. So we're going to go to the shared drive, and we are at Main South. And you are a student, so we'll go to Students, and we'll go to AAT, which is Applied Arts and Technology. We're then going to go for this class to Applied Tech, and specifically we're going to be looking at a file that I have in the CAD shared folder. I am Mr. Kraus, so we'll go into that Kraus folder. And then we're going to go and look at under CAD 1 assignments, under CAD, and we're going to take a look at this file, this PDF file 17-20. So I'm going to open that up, and we are going to focus on this file here in the top right corner, the dovetail slide. So I'm a little too small. All right. So let's talk about this file for a second. As when you're trying to model something, in this case, we're trying to replicate something. In the future, you may be drawing something that's coming out of your mind, out of thin air that you're trying to create. I find it's useful to have some sort of a sketch or reference so you can think about how to model this object. There are a number of different ways we can go about trying to create this object in Inventor. You might focus on this front corner, this kind of shape in here, and we can then do some commands called extrude, where we sketch this front shape, we give it some sizes, and then we create the thickness of the object. Another one might be you do this whole back surface from the ground here, the top corner here. And then maybe we make that shape and dimension it and extrude for the entire thickness again. We have holes to create, and we may have to locate those holes and extrude / cut material out of an existing three-dimensional object. So it's kind of important that you think about that in the future. Now, I'm gonna kind of flip back and forth, but I also have a digital copy on another screen in front of me, or maybe a printed copy if you were inclined to do that. And I will be referencing those so you don't have to go constantly back and forth between the object here and what we're drawing in Inventor. So here is our drawing area, and to start, I'm going to go up to our menus across the top and make sure I'm in 3D model. If in Inventor you ever are not sure what's going on, in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, bottom left-hand corner, currently it says ready. When I go into a command, I click on one of these tools, it's going to, if I can actually do something, let's not have clicked on that. If I go and try to do something, it's probably going to give me information down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And to start, we need to start with a 2D sketch. So I'm going to go and left-click on that 2D sketch, and it wants me to identify, you can see down here in the bottom left-hand corner, select the plane to create your sketch. Well, if I wanted to sketch on any of these other planes, I could click on those and it would start there. But since I have it visible on my screen, I'm going to left-click to start on my XY plane. When I do that, you'll see I now get the crosshairs coming out from the origin point, our 0, 0, 0. And I have a set of toolbars up at the top that are specific to sketching. That's kind of over here on the left. Then we have some other commands for modification of some basic sketching. And then we have some pattern options. And then we have constraints, and those will become very important. The more you pay attention to constraints, probably the more accurate and more professional your objects will be. And then we have a finish sketch button. And last time I checked, Inventor will not let you save until you are in model, 3D modeling, okay? So keep that in mind. You need to be able to save, and you can do that by just finishing the sketch. And now I can actually save this file. And again, let's do that. So when you go to save, you can either go to that disk, or under File, you should be able to do a Save As, and you'll need to make sure that you look down in your save window and find your U drive. When you go to your U drive, you're going to see whatever you have in there. If you don't have one, I'd suggest creating a folder, but that's up to you. And to create a folder, you can hit this icon right here, create a new folder, and I'm going to call this test. And then I'm going to go inside that folder, and I can decide what the file name is going to be. In this case, it's going to be dovetail slide. Okay, so I'm going to type that in and hit save. And now up at the top middle of our screen, hopefully the file has the name that I have called it. The only thing that you have to pay very close attention to is that you know where you are saving. All right, I'm going to go back to sketching. So you could go back up here in the top left and start a new sketch, but you'll see here in my model window, I already have a sketch going. So I want to access that. So I should be able to either double left click on it to make it active, or I can probably right click on it and there should be an option to edit the sketch. As I'm already in the sketch, I don't see that currently. All right, I generally like to start with one of these 4 options: line, circle, arc, or rectangle. Most of the time I use line. And think of this as sketching. Okay, I'm going to sketch out the shape that I'm going to use to start my object. So I'm going to get line, and I always like to start it at the origin point. As I'm drawing, Inventor is going to do things called constraints. Okay, and constraints are beneficial to us. They can also be problematic depending upon what's going on. By starting at the origin point, that particular corner of the object I'm drawing will stay locked there unless I do something to unlock it. So I'm going to left click once and let go. Now I have a sketch line that I can start creating things with. You'll see as I move it around, I'm getting information about the distance that the line is, as well as its angle. Those are helpful, but they're not necessary. What I like to do, if I have reference, is you'll see Inventor kinda right there to the bottom right of my cursor, there is an icon. That icon is this right here up in our constraints. And you can see that's gonna help constrain this line perfectly vertical. We come down here to the X line, you'll see I now have a horizontal constraint, which we can see right here. So as I'm sketching, I could be constraining or adding additional constraints to my sketch. So let's go and draw a horizontal line in here. And I know on my piece of paper that the first line that I'm going to draw is about 1 inch long. So I'm going to get my line in the orientation that I want, which in this case is horizontally constrained. I'm going to type in 1 for 1 inch, and I'm going to hit enter. You'll see here I now have a 1 inch line. It is showing that there is a horizontal constraint. And by the way, I can zoom in and zoom out with my scroll button on my mouse. Let's take a quick look. So the line we just drew was 1 inch, and it was right here. This is the line that I just drew. So now I'm going to sketch out next this angled line, and then I'm going to sketch out this horizontal line here, the other angle, and this bottom 1 inch line. Okay. Some of these objects that I sketch will have distances, others will not. So the next line goes up at an angle back to the left. I don't know how tall it is, and I don't know what angle it's at, so I'm just going to left click and place that. I'm going to press and hold the scroll button for a pan. That's what I'm doing here. This is called panning. Press and hold the scroll button. Okay, and now I know I want a horizontal line. Okay, in this case, the icon that's coming up is 2 lines, and that is parallelism. Okay, we see that right here. It's a parallel constraint. So it's trying to make this parallel with the line that I've already drawn down here. So I'm going to make it parallel. I also don't know how long that particular line is. So I'm going to just make sure that it is parallel. I'll left click to place that corner. Again, I don't know how long this line is. I could worry about an angle right now, but I'm not going to. And I'm just going to make sure I come down back to that X horizontal line. Okay, I'm going to left click and place that point there. And I'm going to then drag this cursor over. And this is back to one of those 1 inch distances. So I'm going to type in 1 and hit enter. Okay, I'm going to hit escape right now. And that kind of takes me out of the function that I was in. Okay, and those things are highlighted. And right now, it may be hard to see, but I have like purple lines. Okay, those are not fully constrained lines. And then we have the black lines down here, which are hard to see because these two are currently on the X line. for our XY plane. But those lines are fully constrained. So when a line is black, it is fully constrained. When it is purple or magenta, I can left click and drag on them, and I should be able to move them as I see fit. So I'm gonna hit escape a couple of times, clear out what I was doing. I'm gonna go back to the line sketch, and I'm gonna come down and pick up where I left off on this corner right there. And you can see it's got this green dot. It's kind of showing me like an endpoint. Some of you may have known things like that as grips. I'm gonna left click to start there, and now I'm gonna work on going up. So let me go back and look at my picture. If I wanted to draw this line up, I know that that is 1 inch in height, or I can work on drawing this line at the 2.25. I think we're going to do the 2.25. Okay, so I'm going to make sure this line is vertical. There's my vertical constraint. I'm going to type in 2.25 and hit enter. And now I have a vertical 2.25 inch line. It's not currently fully constrained because I don't know how far it is away from our origin point quite yet. I'm now going to go horizontal back over to the vertical Y line and make sure that it is, in this case, I'm seeing a perpendicular constraint icon. Okay, looks like this. It's a perpendicular constraint. It's making it perpendicular to this line, or maybe the X lines down here. It is a perpendicular constraint, and I am on that Y, that Y vertical 0 axis. So I'm going to left click to place that. You see now that line is showing a parallel constraint, and it is black now, so it is fully constrained currently. And then I'm just going to go back down to my origin point, and I'm going to left click using that green grip right on the origin point, and that is the extent of my sketching right now. So I'm going to hit escape and cancel out of there. So let's go back and look at our example. Actually, yes. Right now, I'm seeing mostly some area in here that is not fully constrained yet. So we see that we have a distance from 2 points at 2.5 inches. So I can put that one in. I'm also going to go and put in this 60-degree angles, and I'm also going to put in this 1/2 inch height. Okay, that's the next things we're going to put in. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and let's start with a distance. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to go and try to put a dimension in from this. So sorry, up on here under constraints, dimensions are constraints. I'm going to put a dimension from here to here, and according to my piece of paper, that should be 2.5 inches. Okay, and now that's gone and changed things a little bit, hasn't it? So if I didn't like that, I should be able to come in here and in some way, shape, or form, grab a grip, and it's apparently not going to let me do that. So we're gonna play with that in a little bit. So 2 ways to do this. If I wanted to get rid of something, I could come here and maybe I want to delete this line. So if I click on it and I hit the delete key on my keyboard, delete key, or if I have it selected, I probably can right click, and then you'll see there's a whole bunch of options under right click. There is delete there. I'm just going to highlight this line, and I should be able to grab this grip out here. I'm just going to drag it farther over. Okay, so I just extended that line, and I'm going to go back up and get a sketch line, and I'm going to grab this dot, and I'm going to go down to that dot. Okay, so I'm back to where I was. Sometimes it's easier just to redraw things than try to fight the constraints that might exist. Okay, so constraints can be good and bad. Next, I have a 1/2 inch height. So the height between this line and these lines down here should be 1/2 inch. So I'm going to get that dimension again. I'm going to go from this left line or this right line, doesn't matter, to the line that's going to help us with that kind of notch in there. And now I have a dimension, and I'm going to left click to place it, and I'm going to put in 0.5, and I'm going to hit enter. Again, you're seeing more and more things start to become black and fully constrained. Last but not least, I need to put the angles on these two lines. So I'm going to start with a dimension. Again, you go, that's an angle. Well, in Inventor, if I go between two lines that are not perpendicular, you'll see it wants to let me put in an angle dimension. So I'm going to left click to place that. The angle dimension we're looking for is 60 degrees. And there's my 60-degree line. Now, this other line over here, you could certainly do another angular dimension, but I wanted to show you a feature of constraints. So this constraint right here is called equal. So since I already have that left angled line, it's black, it's fully constrained. Since those two should be equal, if I click on the equal button, I can select that line, select the other line, and now I have a fully constrained sketch because those two lines should, in theory, they're at the same angle, they should be fully constrained. So I'm going to hit the Finish Sketch button. And you can see it zoom for me. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to also do a 3D orbit. And now I have a finished sketch, which you can see listed over here. If you're working on very complex objects in the future, you might want to right-click on there. You can eventually go back and edit that sketch. You can change any of these dimensions that you might want. You can also do a slow double left click, and you can see I can change the name of this. And maybe this is my dovetail base sketch. And I can rename those if I can spell S-K-E-T-C-H. Okay. If I have a very complex object, I can have a whole bunch of these in Sketch 1, Sketch 20, Sketch 50. That can become confusing. So you can also rename those to help you understand what you're looking at. Since I have exited sketching, I can now save this. Since we have already given it a name and a location, I can hit the Save button. And that's where I'm going to end video number 1. Sketch geometry, constraints, dimensioning. The next video will pick up with giving a third dimension to this object.